Hi there folks, and welcome to this tutorial for motion matching for Unity gameplay walkthrough tutorial type thing. We're using Bolt, we're using motion matching for Unity. This is episode 6 and we're continuing where we left off, and we've got to finish off the strafe. Now we did a lot with the strafe, draws the gun and can strafe in all different directions, can walk, can also run, did blend spaces and changed a bunch of settings. There is only one thing that I need to fix now. So, the character does rotate with the camera, but if we rotate beyond a certain point, it doesn't work anymore. Or, for example, if we're running this way and we go into strafe, it doesn't turn around. You can see the gizmos are right for the green trajectory, so the predicted trajectory, but there aren't any animations that turn this character around. So we need to do something else. We're using cut clips, so there's definitely not going to be enough animations there. So the first thing we need to do is, we need to change some settings. So there are these angular error warp settings, and that is what actually keeps the character, going in the direction of that those trajectory green points are pointing. It's just that there's a threshold that it only operates within a threshold. Within a range, and if we get out of that range, it no longer operates. So there we go, it doesn't operate. That range here is 0.5 to 60. We need this to be something like 180. And this should now work no matter what happens. We should be able to get that. Yep, it works fine. Now the only thing that we need to do is now that needs to be done at runtime instead of done in the inspector, because we still don't want it to be like that when we're just running around. We already have animations when we're just normally running around that turn us all the way around. So we only want to use it when we're running to fix minor errors, and that's why it was set at 60 to begin with. So let's go to our behavior, and if you recall in the graph, when we entered combat, we called this function maybe not on that one. We called it on the pistol combat equip and then begin strafe. So let's go to this begin strafe. Not there. That's something else. Let's go to this player logic script, and we can go to begin strafe. And here it is. I actually was halfway through doing it. So we need to call mxm animator dot angular error warp threshold. Now there's a minimum threshold and a maximum threshold. Now the minimum threshold is just to stop it jittering around. It's like 0.5 or something degrees. We don't need to change that one. We just need to change the actual threshold. And I'm just going to call that 180F. And we can do the same thing here, except we're going to make it back to 60. So that should now do it for us, and that problem will be gone. Let's go back and check. So we'll press tab, begin strafe. Now if I'm running this way and I strafe, there we go. We should be able to see in our inspector as I press tab, it changes. Yep, from 60 degrees to 180 here. All right, cool. So that is now working. A few more things we do need to fix up with the strafe, and that is the starts and stops. Now we don't actually have any run starts and run stops, which is a little bit annoying, but for now, as a kind of placeholder fix, I'm going to do something a little bit tricky. So let's go to our pistol combat here. And you can see this run. I've got all my runs in blend spaces, but there's no run starts. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same starts and stops and all that stuff. Let me just locate these animations. But for the future and past trajectories, I'm going to use the runs instead. So it's going to be similar poses with different trajectories. And it might seem like we're duplicating stuff, but this is something you kind of have to do when it comes to cut clips. You're going to make so much fewer poses with cut clips anyway that it's not really a performance problem, because cut clips, you just don't get that many poses. So let's do this. Let's start with this. Let's add in the walk forward start. I'll just do this one and then I'll fast forward through the other. So walk forward start. We don't have a run forward start, but they are seamless animations. So the end of the walk forward start does kind of go into the run. So we're just going to do that anyway. So walk forward start to run forward loop. There we go. And I'll chuck that in there. And I'm going to leave runtime splicing off. Flatten trajectory is fine. Extrapolate, we won't extrapolate because we're using that. I'm going to go through and fast forward this. I'm going to add them all now. Okay, so that's finished. You can see I've pretty much got the same animations in here now, except they have different trajectories and different tags. I just want to make sure that I have... I want to have extrapolate turned off. There's one there. So same thing, except for the loops that I've got in the before and after animations, I've been using the run loops. So as I said, same poses, different trajectories, and that should make it a little bit more responsive. They are tagged with pistol and run now, so the locomotion speed ramp should work for us here. What we do want to do though is actually update that locomotion speed ramp. So we're in the combat phase, so pistol, we do want to update the locomotion speed ramp. So locomotion speed ramp, update speed ramp. So we have that there, and I don't think I need to... Yes, it's on the same thing, so I don't need to pass in that. So we can update the locomotion speed ramp. And we also need to do one more thing. We need to actually pre-process this data. I haven't done that yet. The pre-processor, and let me just make sure I have my file path, pre-processed data. It's already there. Wasting my time. And off it goes. And we're done. Okay, cool. So this should be a little bit more responsive for the running. I'm just going to save my scene, and I'm actually going to override. Just going to make sure that I've got all that saved in the actual prefab. Same with this one. That's already good. All right, let's hit play and see if we get it a little bit more responsive. You might not be able to tell, but I can tell because I'm controlling it. So if I hit tab, okay, so that's not quite working. We might have to do the runtime splicing, I think. What's going on here with... Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, so let's go into our runtime splicing. So this is just an experiment. With motion matching, you can't always go, okay, if I do this, it will do that. It doesn't always work the way you think of it. There's really subtle differences between animation sets. So you have to try things out. And that's all I'm really doing here, is I'm trying things out. So I'm going to put runtime splicing on these starts. We don't need to do that on the stops, and we don't want to because we've got left and right foot. They won't actually go together well as long as we've got the right trajectory. So let's give this a try instead. Ultimately, what you would do is, well, I mean, the best possible outcome would be to create the run starts, obviously, and the run stops, but we don't have that. That's going to get the best results, but it's going to be a lot more work. The second best thing is to then take these animations into Blender and just hack them together. Do like a blend, maybe speed up the start a little bit, and then do a blend between the start and the run. So you actually have an animation that is kind of like it. At least it's going to make it more responsive, even if it's not like a professionally made animation. Players will notice more if the gameplay is wrong than if the other stuff is wrong. So it's a little bit more responsive, and there's a little bit of a jump between it because we're using runtime splicing. I actually don't think it has worked so well. So there you go. Not so great. Let's take those all out. So as I said, it's a bit of an experiment. It sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. In this case, it has not worked for me. I will leave the stops though. Yeah, I'm going to leave the stops because I think they're going to work. I think the starts are not going to work, so let's delete the starts. We're going to have to do something about this later. We're just going to have to live with the a little bit of slow responsiveness until I can hack together those animations. So we've still got the stops. So this is kind of the point of this tutorial series. It's unscripted. I'm trying to, solve the problems as they come along, because that's a more realistic way things are going to happen, rather than giving you just a tutorial where everything goes right, because it's easy to do that. But here we go. So what have I done? Okay. So now that I don't have starts that have run, I've got this locomotion speed ramp updating. I probably need to get rid of that now. So that should solve our issue. Let me just check this one space. They have, I should put the run tag on these guys on the favor run. Actually, yes, I'm going to do that. Run. And run. Go through and pre-process. So basically what it was doing is like, I can't find any good animations because I'm, it's doing the locomotion speed ramp, the walking stuff, but there wasn't any walking. So let's give that a go. Still doing something a little bit strange. So it's just going straight into the run. And that's a little bit because of there not being a run start. Let's go to the debugger. And have a look and see what's happening there. Oh, come on. All right, let's record. Okay, that actually is working now. All right. So what we can do is preview. It's not going to work well with a camera, so we'll go to the scene view and we'll look at that. So when we did a start, let's go over to our current pose and check the tags. So our favor tag is still none. Okay, so you know what it is. Since we're not using the locomotion speed ramp, let's do a few more things here. So we're not using the locomotion speed ramp, so let's not actually tag these here with run. So I'm going to remove that. I'm just going to say apply favor tags, so that's going to apply to all of these. The other thing I want to do is I want to actually go to my trajectory, and I want to make my trajectory faster when we're strafing. So here's my trajectory. The two things I want to do. I want to have an input profile. So let's make an input profile for, I'm just going to duplicate that and make it for combat, because I think it's not quite correct. So combat, strafe. Okay, and then we're going to go to, so hang on, what do we have here? I think this one needs to be, well, we'll leave that for now. We'll go to our graph, and when we go into here and we begin strafing, actually let's go to pistol. When we begin strafing, a few things we want to do. We want to also, on the trajectory generator, so MX7 trajectory generator, and we want to say input profile. I want to set the input profile. That took a while to get to. I'll just chuck that in there. I might actually do this when we go into combat initially. So I'll chuck that there, because this is kind of where we change the trajectory stuff. And I can replug that in there. Okay, cool. We've got our input profile. And we're going to have to do the same thing when we go back to locomotion. We want to set it back. So let's chuck this in here. And we want to add unit to get variable, get object variable, and we want to choose the trajectory generator, plug that in. Okay, and we want to make that back to locomotion. All right, so that's that. Another thing we want to do when we go into our strafe, so when we begin strafe, we also maybe want to change the trajectory generator max speed. I think it's a little fast, so m trajectory generator dot speed, max speed equals, what is it by default? The default is 4. I think it's more like 3.6 for strafing, just so that we can be more accurate, 3.6f. And I want it to be a lot more responsive, so m trajectory generator dot move speed, direction bias equals, so what was it before? It was 15, let's make it 20. This will make it a lot more responsive, and we'll make actually that was a position bias we want to be 20, and the direction bias will make 15. So we've got to undo all of this again when we end strafe, so I'll set it back to 4. This can go back to 10, and then this can go back to 15. This should help out a little bit. We could also change the input profile in these, and it's probably the best option in the long run. We'd have to make a serialized field here. That's fine, I'll probably do that later, but for now, for flexibility, we'll leave that in the graph. Let's go here and test that out. Okay, cool. So we're strafing. Does take us a little too long to get into the run. We need to hack together those starts a bit better, and we'll get there eventually. I do want to try out the starts. I'll see that. I'll do that off camera and see if I can get that to work as I was trying before. Maybe I did something wrong, but this seems a little bit better. Our trajectory generator, you can see those values changing. Let's check that that is the correct. Okay, so it's close. 3.6. Now I'm actually doing something a bit silly here. I'm hard coding these values in. I should probably make some functions like that changes all of these at once, and you can pass them in the graph, but you know, I'm not doing that for now. Let's try this at 3.4. You generally don't want to hard code this stuff. It's a bit of a silly way I'm doing it there. You're better off having it as a function in here where you can pass in those values. I might go and change that all off camera, but the idea is it'll be the same. Like, that'll just take me longer to show you, but it'll be the same. So that looks about right now for the walking. So the walking's a bit slow, so we need to go to our strafing. Don't worry about what's happening here. That's because we need a turn in place. So we go here. Let's make this 0.3. So the walking. Actually, the walking needs to be faster. It needs to be more like 0.5. And even more than that. 0.65. It's close. We also don't have an acceleration and deceleration between walking and running, and we'll go into Blender and we'll hack these together, I reckon. Then it would transition straight away instead of having this really long delay. It's really easy to do that. You just do a messy blend. As long as they're kind of in sync, the footsteps, you're fine. We could do with, you know, a different calibration as well. So 0.65 seems pretty good. I'm going to make this even harsher. So let's make this like 30. the strafe position bias. That means it'll be a little bit quicker. And we'll go to our calibration. So where's our calibration module? So we've got general, sprint, and let's make a new one for strafe. And for this one, it's going to be body velocity. Let's not use too much body velocity. We'll keep that at 0.7. We might actually make, so I'm just making this the same as the other ones. 3, 1, 3. I need to flip this around before the next update, so the defaults are like this. I'm going to make it 0.75 or 0.8, so the trajectory is more important than the pose, because we do need to jump a pretty big gap in pose here. So yeah, let's try that out. What we're going to need to do is also in here, we'll go mxm animator dot set what is it, calibration, set calibration data, and we're going to pass in our name. So what I call it strafe. I did. And here we'll call it general. Alrighty. Okay. I'm going to go to my input profile for combat strafe, and I'm actually going to make the magnitude, or sorry, the pos bias multipliers 1 for walking, because I wanted to get to those really quick. So it's still struggling. It's what it's doing is it's struggling to bridge the gap. Oh, this is too long. That's the walk. Okay, sorry. This is my mistake here. So 0.5. It actually is close to 0.47 maybe. There we go. That should be a little bit better. There we go. That's a little bit better. That's as good as you're going to get when you don't have a transition. But now it's much more instant. I had that walking multiplier magnitude for the input profile way too high. So that's working a lot better now. We've got our stops. We still have a little bit of a delay going from the slow walk to a run, but we'll fix that much later. That's more of a polish thing. We've got the system working now, more or less. So what do we really need to do to go from here? Well, the next thing I need to do is I need to make these not hard-coded. I'm going to do that off camera because it's just going to take time, but you get the idea of what you need to do. I'm not going to be able to have time to teach you every single possible thing, but you get the idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple of utility functions that are going to do some things. So things like, begin strafe, setting the strafe mode and the angular error warping. All of these things are probably going to be, I'm probably going to leave hard-coded. And these ones I'm going to set as a separate function that does all three of these things. So like I'm going to call it set trajectory generator data or something. And I'll call that separately in the graph. That way we can actually tweak the values in the graph instead of me having to go back and change the code, because that's a bit silly. But I think I'm going to leave it there. We didn't really do anything new. We just kind of improved the strafing. But I don't want to make these videos too long. The last one was really quite long. The next episode, probably going to move on to something else, just for the sake of it. Maybe some aim. So when we're looking up and down, we aim up and down. Another thing we need to consider is, let me go to the scene, is putting the hand on the gun. Now that's not MXM, that's IK stuff, but hey, whatever, let's do that. So before we go, let's have a discussion about what's happening here. Because I'm in a strafe mode and angular error warping doesn't work when we're standing still, we get this thing where the trajectory is pointing that way because that's the way the camera is pointing. You can see that. But we're facing this way, and because we're idle, the trajectory is turned off. So what we actually need to do here, it's actually quite simple. It's another thing we need to change. And if we go over to our character model, and we set our general turn in place threshold. Now, I don't have any turn in place animations at the moment. Ideally, you'd put them in, and then the character would play an animation that would turn to face that direction. But because I don't have them at the moment, I'm just going to chuck this turn in place threshold to 360, so it's never going to turn in place. Basically, what happens is when that is, if the angle between where you're facing and where the green one is facing is greater than that angle, it goes back into motion matching and tries to pick an animation that'll get you there. We don't have that animation, so there's no point. I'll set the turn in place threshold to max so we stay in idle. Let me just make sure that that is permanent for now. And we will override that. In my case, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm fine if the character doesn't turn for now in place like that. So if I go to idle now, if I press tab, he just goes to idle, he doesn't jitter around. But as soon as I go to turn around, he's going to turn around. So yeah, there we go. That's it. Thank you for watching. That is episode 6. Next episode, we will probably look at some aiming IK and see what other stuff we can do there. I want to just remember that we're going to revisit all this stuff when we get to polishing. We're just setting all this stuff up to be kind of good enough, but we're going to really polish it later when we've got a lot more features. There's no point polishing parts of your game until you've got all the parts of your game. So I'm going to leave it there for strafing now, and we'll move on to other things. We need to be able to aim. We need to be able to shoot. Those are really important. We also need to do an upper body draw animation. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but it'll be something different to strafing. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next tutorial.